Hey guys, Trey here. Wanted to do a forecast discussion on the potential severe weather event tomorrow, Tuesday, March 17th. As you can see here from the convective outlooks, we have a potentially an active couple of days coming up for the southern plains. This video is going to focus mainly on tomorrow's severe weather threat. We have a slight risk from the Texas-Mexico border down here near Del Rio and the I-10 corridor, all the way up into the Red River area, Wichita Falls, and spreading into the western portions of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. So let's take a look at the bigger picture here. You can see this big swirl right off the coast of California in our satellite imagery. That is our big upper trough that is going to be responsible for the synoptic scale lifting mechanism for our severe weather tomorrow through Thursday across the southern portion of the United States. And let's take a look at the 500 millibar map here. The observed upper air maps from the SPC were not working this evening, so this is from the mesoanalysis page. So it's kind of cut off here on the left side, but you can see evidence of that upper trough, really very strong closed low off the coast of California, with 80 to 90 knot winds rounding the bottom of that trough. Now, as this trough is going to move toward the east and southeast over the next couple of days, and that's going to be our synoptic scale driver for our severe weather. Tomorrow there's going to be a piece of energy out ahead of that, the main energy from this trough that's going to be our large-scale focus, but we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So let's take a look at the surface data now. This was from about 7 minutes ago as we're recording this. But you can see here that, let me get my pen tool going if I can. So you can see down here in the southern portion of Texas, we have very moist air mass, warm and moist air mass. 70s dew points down south of San Antonio here, but mainly mid to upper 60s dew points with temperatures in the low to mid 70s and even the 80s down here toward Brownsville and McAllen. But we do have some sort of a baroclinic zone situated across Texas. It's kind of hard to tell because there's not really a major wind shift with this, but if I had to guess, it would be somewhere. It's really hard to tell. It'd probably be somewhere in here, but it's very hard to tell. You have some evidence of easterly and southeasterly winds to the north of this boundary, and more southerly and southeasterly winds to the south of this boundary, but it's really pretty diffuse at this point. It's probably actually a little farther south, but it's just hard to tell from these surface winds. But that's going to be a major player for tomorrow, so we'll have to watch how this evolves over the next 24 hours because it's going to be a major player in our severe weather chances across Texas and Oklahoma tomorrow. So let's take a look at the model data. This is the 0Z NAM, hot off the presses. It's not even fully in yet, but this is the brand new model data from the NAM. You can see that big upper low situated off the Northern California coast. That is going to move slightly to the east and southeast tomorrow. It's really not going to move much at all over the next day or so. It's really, all it's going to do is get really kind of elongated, kind of positively tilted. But this piece of energy right here, this little short wave out ahead of the main energy, is going to be our driver for severe weather tomorrow. It's not going to be this main energy. That'll be more in play on Wednesday and Thursday. But tomorrow it's going to be this little short wave out ahead of the main flow. As this flow starts to go across the higher terrain of the Rockies, we would expect maybe weak cyclogenesis out here. The stronger cyclogenesis at the surface is going to wait until the main energy and the main area of strong winds associated with the upper trough begin to eject across the Rocky Mountains into the southern plains. But tomorrow we might get some weak cyclogenesis here, and that's evidenced kind of on this surface map. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. This is valid 21Z tomorrow, so 4 p.m. Central Time. And you can see some evidence of a small little surface low trying to take shape there. And here's our baroclinic zone, our kind of pseudo warm front, if you will. And it's going to be where this warm front sets up. Is going to give us our best chance for tornadoes, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, some semblance of cyclogenesis, pretty weak though, but we do get a strengthening of the baroclinic zone out here to the east of that surface low, a little bit of a warm front there, and as a result, the winds at the surface are going to strengthen and back out of the east-southeast to the in the warm sector of this weak surface cyclone. So let's go up to 850 millibars as well, just to see how our low-level jet is looking. And you can see nothing groundbreaking, nothing mind-blowing, but we do have maybe an enhancement over here in the Red River Valley area and up into Kansas, although that'll be well north of the warm front. But right along the warm front here in the northern Texas vicinity, we have sort of a small enhancement of the low-level jet, 30 to 35, even 40 knots in here, according to this model run. So that also could play a role in the strength of convection we see from tomorrow's severe weather event. But let's take a look at moisture now. So this matches up pretty well with what we saw. We had 70s dew points down in deep south Texas with mid to upper 60s surrounding that, and then 40s and 50s up here in the Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma. But as that weak cyclogenesis occurs tomorrow, it's going to draw that deeper moisture to the northwest into the warm sector. And by 18 to 21Z, we should have a well-defined warm sector to the east of a dry line here, set up almost at the New Mexico-Texas border, and to the south of that warm frontal zone, which in this case, in this model, is situated basically from Dallas-Fort Worth all the way up toward the Lubbock-Plainview areas. And we still are seeing some model differences on where exactly this warm front is going to set up, but it is going to be key as far as where we might have the best potential for tornadic storms. Wherever this warm front sets up is going to be critical. And then as you see by 0Z, kind of stays the same. That warm front's pretty stationary, and that dry line begins to slosh to the east. So let's take a look at some forecast soundings. So just a recap of our ingredients here. We have a synoptic scale lifting mechanism with our shortwave trough, moving out ahead of the main piece of energy from the main trough. So we got our synoptic scale lift. We have several focusing mechanisms here. We have our warm front, our dry line. So we have our mesoscale forcing mechanisms. We're definitely going to have wind shear. We saw southeasterly winds at the surface. As you can see here from the surface map, we'll have southerly or southeasterly winds at the surface, veering to southwesterly aloft. So we are going to have plenty of shear in play, and that again, that low-level jet enhancement potentially across the Red River region could also enhance hodographs in this region, which we'll take a look at here right now. So we have shear. We have a very warm, unstable air mass atop a fairly cold air aloft from the trough. So we're going to have steep lapse rates as well, so our instability is good. So we're looking at a pretty good shot at severe weather. Now, where's going to be the best shot for our severe hazards? Well, if we take let's take some pure dry line soundings. These are at 0Z Wednesday, which would be 7 p.m. tomorrow. So down on the dry line, you can see a very unstable profile here, but our wind profile is pretty darn meager. At least as far as tornadoes go. You can see our winds are very much veered near the surface. We don't have a lot of overall wind shear here to work with as far as tornadoes go. So that's not quite what we want to see if we're looking for tornadoes. We definitely could have some supercells along the dry line, but they're probably mainly going to have a wind and hail threat. Let's take a look at the triple point, right where the warm front intersects the dry line, see if it's any better there. Not much better at all. Again, an unstable atmosphere, but a very poor wind profile for tornadoes. But let's take a look where we had our low-level jet kind of enhancement there just to the south of the Red River. And that's what we want to see for tornadoes. So the best photographs by far are out well ahead of the main area of lift from the dry line. It's out along the warm front. Large looping photographs in the lowest levels. You can see our effective helicity over 300 meters squared per second squared. That's definitely in the range. Definitely in the range for tornadoes. Again, very unstable profile, and one thing to notice here is our 0 to 3 kilometer instability. 0 to 3 Cape right here, 161. Usually we want to see for an enhanced chance of those surface-based parcels becoming stretched and lifted as tornadic vortices. We're looking at maybe 50, 60 as a minimum criteria, and we're seeing 161. So our low-level instability is very, very strong tomorrow. That could bode well for the tornado potential, especially coupled with these large looping photographs in the low levels. So right away, the best photographs by far are out along the warm front, well ahead of the dry line. So it'd be somewhere in the Wichita Falls, Graham, Texas vicinity, out in just south of the Red River. Let's take a look at some of the cams for tomorrow. This is the HRRR 0Z run. So let's take a look if we can get storms and where the storms are going to be according to this model. You can see some warm advection showers in the morning. That's strong warm advection, just going to drive some elevated potential for elevated thunderstorms and showers in the morning hours. Then we do get some thunderstorms by midday up in the Texas Panhandle, according to the HRRR. These are definitely going to be elevated. They're well north of the front, but maybe a small hail threat with those. But by about 2 p.m., we see storms firing up right in the vicinity of that warm front in the northwest Texas region. Definitely going to have to keep an eye on these. Now, the problem with tomorrow is going to be the orientation of the flow with respect to the boundary. So notice how our dry line here is oriented basically north-south, maybe north-northeast to south-southwest. So for any storms that fire along the dry line, we'll take a look at the shear vector here. So the shear vector is 224 degrees. So that means it's out of the southwest. So the shear vector is going to be like this. Let me get my drawing tool if I can. The shear vector is going to be like this. That is not a good thing for discrete thunderstorms, because as storms fire up on the dry line, their anvils are going to seed into the updrafts of the other storms. And as a result, you're going to get a squall line because it'll be a very messy storm mode. Whenever that shear vector is parallel to your initiating boundary, you're more likely to get a squall line versus discrete supercell thunderstorms. So that is a negative, definitely, for dry line storms tomorrow, and also for our warm front storms. Our shear vector, let's take that sounding from near the warm front again. Let's try it again. So just south of the Wichita Falls area, right along the warm front. That is not working. Let's try it one more time. You got it before. There we go. So let's take a look at our shear vector, 199 degrees. So that is out of the south-southwest. So that is going to put our storm motions roughly like this. So any storm that fires up along the warm front is going to have a tendency to cross that front pretty quickly. So for long-lived tornadoes along a warm front oriented like this, roughly west to east, we want to see storm motions that are more west to east. So we're really going to need a right mover, a storm to turn extremely far to the right in order to anchor to this boundary. But it appears that storms are going to have the potential to cross this boundary pretty quickly, limiting the long track tornado threat with any storm that forms near the warm front. So That is something to keep an eye on. It's not that definitely doesn't mean that tornadoes are not possible. When any storm is going to be near this boundary, it's going to have a chance to produce tornadoes because the low-level shear is so much enhanced right near that boundary. But the tornado threat is going to be more brief with these storms along the warm front. So let me get rid of that arrow there. Oops. Okay. So again, let's go through the HER scenario here. So it's firing storms along that near that warm front by about 2 o'clock, and it keeps firing along that warm front. These storms are going to have to be watched for a brief tornado threat. Anything along the dry line looks pretty darn messy. As we talked about, the storm mode pretty much going to be linear along the dry line because it is going to be the flow is going to be parallel to that initiating boundary, that dry line. So storms should have a tendency to grow upscale into a squall line pretty quickly, but any discrete storms out here will have a tornado threat with any when they can interact with that front. But again, it might not be for a very long time that they'll interact with that front because the storm motions are more perpendicular and to that front, and they'll cross that front more quickly. So let's take a sounding here. This is let's take a 0Z sounding from just south of these storms, right along the front from the HER. And so we're seeing definitely shear helicity that is marginal but adequate for tornadoes here. Definitely a very unstable profile as well. Again, 3 Cape, very large, almost 100 here. So low level instability, definitely a plus as far as tornado genesis goes. But yeah, we're seeing some looping of the photographs. HER not quite as aggressive with the low level shear as the NAM was, but it's definitely showing supercells along the warm front here, and also maybe some embedded supercells here along the dry line. But again, we looked at those photographs; they're just not that conducive for tornadoes at all. Very little low-level curvature. So I'm thinking the target for tomorrow, if you're chasing, is going to be up along the warm front, near the Red River, just south of the Red River. But it's going to be important to watch the surface odds in the morning and throughout the early afternoon. Wherever that warm front sets up is where you're going to want to be. But right now the model's showing it kind of right around the Wichita Falls, just south of Wichita Falls area. Let's take a look at the dew points here. That'll show us where that front sets up on the HER, this particular forecast. Yep, and it looks like by 0Z, the warm front will be right along this kind of corridor just south of the Red River, maybe in here. So that will be the area to watch, I think, just south of Wichita Falls near the Graham, maybe Seymour areas would be an area to watch for tornadic supercells tomorrow. Let's take a look at another cam here, the WRF ARW, just another potential forecast we have for tomorrow. And it sets up the warm front a little farther south, but again, the same idea. That dry line out here, the warm front out here, so we would expect storms to be most tornadic out in this region, out ahead of the main wave and along the warm front. Can't take soundings here, but let's take a look at the reflectivity. So again, keep in mind where that warm front was, and this fires up some storms right along that warm front. Yeah. Again, kind of a messy mode because of the just overall boundary parallel flow along the dry line, and kind of messy wind profiles out here. Definitely some veer back veer in the warm sector to work with on those photographs. So kind of an overall messy mode. One of these beans, one of these little supercells could produce tornadoes for sure along that warm front, but again, they're going to have the potential to become elevated pretty quickly as they cross that warm front. One more cam for you, the NSSL WRF model. Again, you see those warm advections, showers and storms early in the morning, and then storms by late afternoon down on the warm front here. Not showing up much in the way of updraft helicity, so these could be transient supercells, but If the NAM is anywhere close to correct and those wind profiles are correct along the warm front, definitely could have some potential for tornadic supercells there. And again, the mode along the dry line, pretty messy, pretty quick transition to a linear mode, and we get a kind of a squall line moving across central Texas Wednesday, early Wednesday morning. So it's going to have to be kind of a wait and see deal tomorrow morning when you get up. Take a look at the satellite and the surface map to see where that front is. One more tool I like to use, and I'll show you here, is the SPC's SHREF page, Short Range Ensemble Forecast page. This is the combination probability of significant tornado, and it shows the mean surface wind. Basically, just a probability of for significant tornadoes, where the significant tornado parameter is maximized. So you can see here tomorrow that our bullseye, this is at 0Z, is going to be right where we said it would be, just to the south of the Wichita Falls area along that warm front. It's maximized. So that definitely an area to watch. Definitely would, if you're chasing tomorrow, pick the warm front as a target, but probably a more marginal day tomorrow. But if you want any chance of seeing a tornadic supercell, I think your best bet is going to be out ahead of the main dry line along the warm front. See if any of those storms can form south of that front and produce a tornado when they're interacting with the front as they cross it. So again, slight risk tomorrow for the southern plains, parts of West Texas into northwest Texas and far southwest Oklahoma. If you're chasing tomorrow, good luck. Stay safe. Definitely, I think at least a brief tornado threat up here would be maximized just south of the Red River. But I think the main threats tomorrow are going to be damaging wind and hail. So if you're going out tomorrow, stay safe. When you wake up in the morning, keep an eye on those surface charts and that satellite to see where that warm front sets up, because that's going to be very critical in where the best tornado potential is going to set up. So if you chase tomorrow, good luck, stay healthy, and we will see you under the mezzo. Thanks for watching.